This week, we've put together a special episode of the One-on-One with Jon Evans podcast. We're taking a deeper dive into the circumstances that led to the closing of Wilmington's all-black high school at the height of America's civil rights movement. The new Hanover County Board of Education made that decision June 26, 1968. The U.S. Supreme Court had ruled that the board's long-delayed plan to desegregate schools was not good enough. The federal government had also warned the board that it could lose funding for not complying with the Civil Rights Act. So the school board abruptly closed Williston Senior High, sending 900 students to mostly white Hoggard and New Hanover high schools. We're hearing from people impacted immediately, like Bertha Todd. She worked as a librarian at Williston and then at Hoggard.
It's not what you do, it's the way that you do it. And that was done wrong. It was not done appropriately. If New Hanover County Board of Education had not spent 14 years, May 17, 1954, to the fall of 1968, then maybe we would have done it differently. Every bit of the delaying, every bit of spending 14 years trying to figure out how we can get around this, all of that was wrong. Instead of planning as to how we're going to do this and transformation as calmly and as appropriately as possible was never even tried.
William Boykin was a rising junior at Williston in 1968. Ulysses Slade was a rising senior. Both went through tumultuous transitions at Hoggard.
The doors of the gymnasium opened, and a white student, came down through the middle of the gymnasium with a rebel flag, probably a 10 by 20 rebel flag on a long pole, with a rebel yell. And I'm looking for all, I'm not going to excuse my language, look for all hell to break out. Oh my God, what is he doing?
And when I got to my locker, I was surrounded by white students telling me, y'all think y'all are so damn smart, excuse my language. And I was just fortunate enough that right there was, down the hall was the assistant principal office that seen the crowd gathering, that came and rescued me and carried me to where they had sent all the black students over in the gymnasium.
Now, 55 years after that school board vote, a legacy graduation is planned for July 1st. So the alumni from Williston High School's last two classes will have the opportunity they did not receive in 1968. Hear the story on the One-on-One with Jon Evans podcast, available now on all major podcast apps and also on WECT.com. Hello, everyone. I'm Jon Evans. Welcome to a special episode of One-on-One. It's June 7th, 1968, in Wilmington, North Carolina. The senior class is gathered inside Williston Senior High School, preparing to receive their diplomas. It's unlikely these young men and women knew it at the time, but generations of graduations from New Hanover County's all-black high school would end with them.
Williston was a part of the cultural community. You had home, you had church, and you had Williston.
That's Ulysses Slade. He was a junior at Williston Senior High in 1968.
It was a staple of the community. This was the epicenter of learning for us. Here again, I use the word institution. This is where our parents went to school. This is where some of our grandparents went to school. For the 1968 Board of Education to close this facility was beyond comprehension.
Which made the New Hanover County Board of Education's decision on June 26, 1968, that much more devastating.
It was a profound statement to be issued by the New Hanover County 1968 School Board to close Williston High School. It sent a shock wave throughout the community. Nobody suspected it. Nobody understood why. And to this very day, nobody has ever explained to any of us why Williston High School was closed.
To understand the feelings of the community, let's look at Williston's history, which begins in 1866. Missionaries built the school on South 7th Street in Wilmington to educate newly freed slaves. It was named after Samuel Williston, who gave a lot of money to the American Missionary Association. In 1873, the missionaries sold the school to the Wilmington Board of Education. The price, $3,000, and it then became the city's first public school for black children. According to records, the Board of Education built a new Williston school on South 10th Street. It opened in 1915. By 1923, Williston became North Carolina's first accredited high school for black students. A rebuilt Williston opened in 1937 after a massive fire destroyed the building. To accommodate an overcrowded student population, a new building went up on the site in 1953. It became the new Williston Senior High School, graduating its first class in 1954. That's the same year the United States Supreme Court rendered its decision in the landmark Brown v. Board of Education case. Justices ruled segregation in the country's public schools is illegal. The following year, 1955, the court ruled again, but it stopped short of including a specific plan for local districts to use in desegregating schools, saying only that it must be done, quote, with all deliberate speed, end quote. But speed was not a concern for the school board in New Hanover County. It wasn't until 1962 that the school system began its desegregation effort when, according to a document prepared by the school system's attorneys, the first black student was allowed to transfer to a previously all-white junior high school. In October 1963, the school board adopted a freedom of choice plan, allowing any parent or guardian, black or white, to apply for their student to be assigned to the school of their choice. The following year, 1964, 19 black students enrolled in previously all-white schools in New Hanover County. The Freedom of Choice Plan served as the county's desegregation plan until May 27, 1968. Now, remember that date. The U.S. Supreme Court, in the case of Green versus the County Board of New Kent County, Virginia, ruled freedom of choice is not good enough to achieve desegregation. Earlier that same month, representatives from the Federal Department of Health, Education, and Welfare visited New Hanover County to determine if the school system was complying with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In essence, Title VI said any recipient of federal funding must comply with the non-discriminatory requirements of that law. Superintendent Dr. William Wagoner was told in a letter that, quote, your plans for desegregation of New Hanover County schools, as currently implemented, do not appear to be adequate to accomplish the purposes of Title VI, end quote. So now, the High Court had ruled freedom of choice was not good enough, and the federal government had said the school system wasn't doing enough. The New Hanover County School Board had to come up with a desegregation plan for the 1968-69 and 1969-70 school years, one that assured compliance with the Civil Rights Act, or, and this is important, they would risk losing all federal funding. So, in early June, the school board ordered a study to be done on the school system and the best way to achieve desegregation. On June 19th, the new superintendent, Dr. Haywood Bellamy, submitted the results to the school board, presenting 3 potential approaches. Number 1, divide New Hanover County into 3 high school districts without regard to race. Williston Senior High would have around 900 students. Hoggard High School would have around 1,600, and New Hanover High would have around 1,900. The study also cited issues with the Williston complex along 10th Street, saying that it should be relieved of a considerable number of children as soon as possible because of needed upgrades. Approach number 2 would be to use the existing Lake Forest School to house Williston Senior High students for the 68-69 school year. The study also found the Lake Forest School would need extensive upgrades and offered little hope of expanding for future needs. Approach number 3 had many steps, but basically, it divided the Williston Senior High students by geography and sent them to either Hoggard or New Hanover High Schools for the upcoming school year. That meant Williston Senior High School would be closed. 1 week later, on June 26, 1968, after what reporters described as a tumultuous meeting featuring loud protests from members of the black community, the school board adopted approach number 3, sending the rising juniors and seniors from Williston to mostly white high schools for the upcoming academic year. The State Board of Education approved the plan the next day. Williston Senior High School came to an end. Bertha Todd worked as a librarian at Williston for 14 years.
We had a very tense spring graduation. It was very tense. Some of the black students would not shake the hand of the superintendent, and usually at those graduations it's traditional to invite the Board of Education members, and they come if they want to, but usually 1 or 2 or more are here for graduation. And that was because of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, and this was the first riot of students that I experienced, the spring of 1968. And of course the National Guard came then and everything else. And the first thing we knew came from the newspaper. Everyone saw the board had made its recommendation to, well, Star News I guess was there, that Williston be dissolved, and half of the students and teachers would attend Hoggard High School, and the other half would attend New Hanover High School. We were shocked. We wondered why, after 14 years, this would happen. We simply didn't know. We were totally unaware. Even me, when I usually work in the community or have some semblance of what may have happened. And most of the teachers then didn't know if they were going to Hoggard or New Hanover High. It was only 1 week before school opened that I received a letter of assignment, and that's a different story. I will not go into that.
Ulysses Slade was going to Hoggard instead of Williston for his senior year.
It took New Hanover County and the Board of Education from 1954 to 1968 to make that change. That's 14 years. A lot of things happened in those 14 years. The mentality stayed the same, but the federal courts and the federal government mandated that they make a change. And New Hanover County resisted that change until the very end, until they had to do so. Coming to Williston, it was home. And can you imagine leaving this building, leaving this place, getting in your car, going home, taking out your key and putting in your door and the key doesn't work? This is my house. This is where I live. and the key doesn't work to your house, and you want to know what happened.
William Boykin had completed his sophomore year at Williston. He went to Hoggard as a junior in 1968. While he did not like it, he could not change it.
Well, back then you learned to accept what your parents said. You had to do, even though it may have hurt, you had to do what mama said. You respected mama. You did it, or you got chastised. Okay?
Yes.
You know, so we had to accept what was thrown down our throat.
So when the new school year began, Hoggard and New Hanover High Schools were desegregated with black students and staff members. Bertha Todd became a librarian at Hoggard.
We looked like aliens to some at the first faculty meeting. Some teachers came up and welcomed us. Most of the teachers went about their business. And I've always said, even in my book, My Restless Journey, if the teachers got that kind of treatment, then the students, as immature as they were and as shocked as they were, may have gotten it worse.
Ulysses Slade says it was not easy being among the first students to integrate a nearly all-white high school.
The first year of integration, full integration at Hoggard, nobody anticipated, nobody knew what to expect. I think we were sizing up the white students, and the white students were sizing up the black students. So we were at a standstill. We were at an impasse, not having expectations of how each other was going to act. But I do remember vividly one day in assembly. Now this is hard to imagine. You're in a fully integrated school, high school, and we went into a facility like this, and the gymnasium. All of the black students sat on one side, and all of the white students sat on another side. Now you know that's absolutely, something's wrong with that. Why? Why the diversity? Why the division? Mm-hmm. Obvious, visually obvious. But the doors of the gymnasium opened, and a student, a white student, came down through the middle of the gymnasium with a rebel flag, probably a 10 by 20 rebel flag on a long pole with a yellow, with a rebel yell. And I'm looking for all, I'm not going to excuse my language, look for all hell to break out. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, what is he doing? And it got quiet. The gymnasium got quiet. It was full of, the whole school was in the gymnasium, but the gymnasium got absolutely quiet because nobody knew what was going to happen. But nothing did. We were still at an impasse, like, okay, what are you going to do, and what are you going to do? And nobody did anything.
There are stories of fights in the school hallways that led to incidents in the streets those first 2 years. William Boykin remembered one that had him fearing for his life.
I can imagine, or remember in my mind, at Hoggard, about 2 weeks before graduation, the fights were beginning at 8 o'clock that morning, 8:30 that morning. My locker was, as soon as you came in the entrance closest to Shipyard Boulevard, to Carolina Beach Road, was right there in that hallway. And when I got to my locker, I was surrounded by white students telling me, y'all think y'all are so damn smart, excuse my language. And I was just fortunate enough that right there was, down the hall was the assistant principal office that seen the crowd gathering, that came and rescued me and carried me to where they had sent all the black students over in the gymnasium to see what could be done to prevent an outrage that day.
Bertha Todd worked to keep the peace at Hoggard. The principal, C.D. Gerganis, first appointed her as a student advisor, and later he made her assistant principal. She put together speak-outs where students could voice their concerns and opinions about the social issues of the day. Ms. Todd also organized a group called the Viking 16.
I knew there were leadership pockets throughout Hoggard. It was 2,300 kids that you're dealing with. And with the help of some office assistants and other students who would come to my office, I found unofficial school leaders, those who enjoyed moving up and sort of stirring up things. So I got 8 white young leaders, and one of them was a member of the Rights of White People, and one was Church of the Black Messiah. But I needed the community representation in those students. Mm-hmm. And then I got, would you believe, this female got reprimanded because she had no females on there. I got all males. And then I got 8 black students the same way. I had to get them bonded first and discuss. And we had recommendations and resolutions that they would have to follow. Well, selecting those young students, black and white, gave them a feeling of importance, sure, which is what I wanted them to feel. Sure. And Star News came out and gave us publicity.
William Boykin, Ulysses Slade, and hundreds of other former Williston students endured that tumultuous transition and received high school diplomas from either Hoggard or New Hanover High. Now, 55 years after a Board of Education vote closed their school, Slade, Boykin, and their classmates will receive their diplomas from Williston Senior High. Officials from New Hanover County, the City of Wilmington, and the county school system have worked together and organized a legacy graduation for the Williston classes of 1969 and 1970. It's set for July 1st in the Williston Gymnasium, a chance for the community to right the wrong done in 1968.
It's not what you do, it's the way that you do it. And that was done wrong. It was not done appropriately. If New Hanover County Board of Education had not spent 14 years, May 17, 1954, to the fall of 1968, then maybe we would have done it differently. Every bit of the delaying, every bit of spending 14 years trying to figure out how we can get around this, all of that was wrong. Instead of planning as to how we're going to do this and transformation as calmly and as appropriately as possible was never even tried. A wound occurred in 1968. The wound was never properly healed. We all know that physicians at times will lance a patient's foot that healed improperly or do something else. You have to lance the wound before you can begin to heal properly. And that's why even now when they talk about it, the bitterness and the wound has been reopened. I think it will serve to lance the wound and give them a legacy graduation.
There are some who are not planning on coming.
That's okay. If they can heal the wound themselves, and maybe they have, I don't know. Mm-hmm. For those who have not yet healed it within themselves, let them come on. If you have 20, let them come on.
I thought it was a good idea for healing. And I explained to Ms. Thompson, who called me, that I would talk to my classmates and see what their ideas were before we made any final decision as to whether we would proceed or not. All of my classmates thought that it was a very good idea and time for healing. And the question that has come up over and over again is, why did it take so long?
I had mixed emotions. I had very mixed emotions about it because of the way the school was closed. But my emotions, I ran a gamut of emotions, being that I didn't want to do it. And I say that, I'm going to preface that and go back and saying when I went to Hoggard, I didn't want to go to Hoggard, but I did. I had to graduate, so I had to attend Hoggard. But I had mixed emotions about the legacy. And after some careful consideration, I came to the surmise that it's a wonderful thing. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to excel. It's an opportunity to go home. It's an opportunity to walk across the stage and receive my diploma, which was a high honor. To graduate from the greatest school under the sun, to walk across that stage as my predecessors had done was an extreme honor. And I was being given the opportunity to do that. I wasn't going to miss that chance.
A chance that many in Williston's final 2 classes thought they'd never see. And the anticipation is already bringing their emotions to the surface.
Right now, my mind is excited about it. I witnessed my son graduate from high school, graduate from college, and it makes you very proud. And I think this will also.
What about you, Mr. Slade? Have any idea what the emotion's going to be when you walk across the stage on that legacy graduation?
It's going to feel like I wish my parents were here to see it. It's going to be an awesome feeling to walk across the stage of Williston Senior High School and get a diploma. It's going to be awesome.
WECT will live stream the legacy graduation for the Williston senior classes of 1969 and 1970. You can watch it on WECT.com and on the WECT news page on Facebook. Our coverage will begin at 1:45 on Saturday, July 1st. I'm Jon Evans. Thanks for joining us for this special episode of One on One.